In a small, fluorescent-lit office in Dayton, Ohio, a team of 9 employees worked for a mid-sized accounting firm called Pinnacle Financial. It wasn't a glamorous job. Think endless spreadsheets, coffee-stained keyboards, and the kind of workplace where the highlight of the week was free donuts on Fridays. The team was a mix of personalities. There was Sarah, the overly enthusiastic office manager who organized everything; Mark, the quiet IT guy who barely spoke; Emily, the new hire desperate to fit in; and 6 others, all just trying to get through the workday. In September 2024, Pinnacle's CEO, a guy named Greg who loved motivational posters and buzzwords like synergy, decided the team needed a morale boost. Business had been slow, and tensions were high after a round of layoffs. Greg's solution? A mandatory team-building retreat in the Hocking Hills, a forested region about 2 hours from Dayton known for its hiking trails, waterfalls, and rustic cabins. The plan was simple: 3 days, 2 nights, in a remote cabin. They'd do trust exercises, roast marshmallows, and bond as a unit. Most of the team groaned at the idea, but Greg was footing the bill, so they didn't have much choice. Sarah, ever the optimist, took charge of logistics. She booked a large cabin called Blackthorn Lodge, nestled deep in the woods. The website described it as secluded yet cozy, with no Wi-Fi or cell service, a feature Greg thought was perfect for unplugging. The team would drive down in a rented 12-passenger van, spend the weekend playing corporate games, and return to Dayton on Sunday afternoon. What could go wrong? As the departure date approached, a few employees started to feel uneasy. Mark, the IT guy, mentioned he'd read online about hikers going missing in Hocking Hills, though he couldn't find details. Emily, the new hire, admitted she wasn't thrilled about being stuck in the middle of nowhere with coworkers she barely knew. But Sarah brushed off their concerns, saying, "It's just a weekend. We'll have fun." On Friday, October 4th, the team piled into the van, their duffel bags stuffed with snacks and sweatshirts. Greg waved them off from the office parking lot, shouting, "Make Pinnacle proud." As the van pulled onto the highway, the mood was lukewarm at best. Little did they know, they were driving straight into a nightmare. The drive to Hocking Hills was uneventful, though the van's GPS struggled as they ventured deeper into the forest. By the time they reached the dirt road leading to Blackthorn Lodge, the sun was setting, casting long shadows through the dense trees. The cabin itself was bigger than they'd expected, a 2-story log structure with a wraparound porch and windows that seemed to swallow the fading light. It looked inviting enough, but something about the surrounding woods felt off. The air was too still, the silence too heavy. Sarah, clipboard in hand, assigned sleeping arrangements while the others unloaded the van. The cabin had 5 bedrooms, so most people would share. Mark, who'd been quiet the whole drive, volunteered to take the small attic room, saying he preferred being alone. No one argued. Emily, still trying to make friends, paired up with another co-worker named Lisa, a sarcastic payroll clerk who seemed unimpressed by the whole trip. As they settled in, Sarah rallied everyone for the first team-building activity, a get-to-know-you game in the living room. They sat in a circle, passing around a talking stick, a random branch Sarah had found outside, and sharing fun facts about themselves. The mood was awkward, and most people were just going through the motions. But then something strange happened. During Mark's turn, he hesitated, gripping the stick tightly. His fun fact was oddly specific. "I used to live near here, about 20 years ago. There was a story about these woods. People said they'd hear voices at night, like whispers, but no one could ever find where they came from." The room went quiet. Sarah laughed nervously and said, "Okay, Mark, let's keep it light." But the story stuck with Emily, who was already feeling uneasy. That night, they made a fire in the backyard and roasted hot dogs. The woods loomed around them, pitch black beyond the fire's glow. Every so often, a branch would snap in the distance, making someone jump. "It's just deer," Sarah said, though she didn't sound convinced. By 11 p.m., everyone was ready to call it a night. They locked the doors, turned off the lights, and went to bed, but not everyone slept. Around 2 a.m., Emily woke up to a strange sound. It was faint, like someone whispering, but she couldn't make out the words. She sat up in bed, her heart racing. Lisa was fast asleep in the other twin bed, snoring softly. The whispering seemed to be coming from outside, near the window. Emily crept out of bed and peered through the curtains, expecting to see one of her co-workers pulling a prank. But the backyard was empty, the fire long extinguished. The whispering stopped as suddenly as it started. Emily told herself it was just the wind or her imagination, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. She climbed back into bed and pulled the covers over her head, willing herself to sleep. Up in the attic, Mark wasn't sleeping either. He'd brought a small flashlight and was sitting on his cot, scribbling in a notebook. He'd heard the whispers too. Not just tonight, but years ago, when he was a kid living nearby. Back then, his grandfather had warned him never to go into the Hocking Hills alone, saying the woods were wrong. Mark hadn't thought about those stories in years, but being back here brought it all rushing back. He wrote down everything he could remember, his handwriting shaky. The next morning, the team gathered for breakfast in the kitchen. Everyone looked tired, but no one mentioned the whispers. Emily wanted to bring it up, but she didn't want to seem paranoid. Mark, however, was acting stranger than usual. He barely ate and kept glancing at the windows as if expecting to see something. When Sarah asked if he was okay, he muttered, "Just didn't sleep well," and excused himself to his room. The trail to Cedar Falls wound through dense forest, the trees towering overhead like silent sentinels. The group trudged along, their chatter from earlier replaced by an uneasy quiet. Sarah, ever the cheerleader, tried to keep spirits up, pointing out interesting plants or urging everyone to breathe in that fresh air. But her enthusiasm was starting to crack. Even she couldn't ignore the oppressive stillness of the woods. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Emily stuck close to Lisa, who'd been rolling her eyes at Sarah's pep talks, but now seemed distracted, glancing over her shoulder every few steps. "You okay?" Emily whispered. Lisa shrugged, but her voice was tight. "Just feels like we're being watched. Don't you feel it?" Emily didn't answer. She did feel it, a prickling on the back of her neck, like invisible eyes boring into her. She told herself it was just Mark's creepy story from last night messing with her head. But when she glanced at Mark, who was trailing at the back of the group, her unease deepened. He was staring into the trees, his face pale, muttering to himself. She couldn't hear what he was saying, but his lips were moving nonstop, like he was arguing with someone only he could see. About a mile into the hike, the trail narrowed, forcing the group into single file. The path was overgrown, roots snaking across the dirt like veins. Sarah, leading the way, called out, "Almost there, guys. The waterfall's just around the bend." But her voice sounded forced, and no one responded. Then, without warning, Mark stopped dead in his tracks. The group behind him nearly collided, grumbling as they shuffled to a halt. "What's his deal?" one of the accountants, a guy named Tom, muttered. Mark was staring at something off the trail, his eyes wide. "There," he said, pointing into the dense underbrush. "You see it?" Everyone turned, squinting into the shadows. At first, Emily saw nothing but ferns and moss-covered rocks. But then, movement, something low to the ground, darting between the trees. It was too fast to make out clearly, but it was big, bigger than a deer, smaller than a bear. The shape was wrong, too, almost human, but not. It vanished before anyone could get a good look. "What the hell was that?" Lisa said, her voice louder than she'd intended. "Probably just a coyote," Sarah said quickly, though she didn't sound convinced. "Let's keep moving. We're almost at the falls." But Mark wasn't budging. "That wasn't a coyote," he said, his voice low and shaky. "I told you, these woods aren't right. We shouldn't be here." "Okay, Mark, enough," Sarah snapped, her patience finally breaking. "You're freaking everyone out. Let's go." Reluctantly, the group started moving again, but the mood had shifted. The playful complaints and forced camaraderie were gone, replaced by a palpable tension. Emily kept glancing back, half expecting to see that thing again. She didn't, but the feeling of being watched was stronger now, like a weight pressing down on her chest. When they finally reached Cedar Falls, the sight was breathtaking, or it would have been under different circumstances. The waterfall cascaded down a rocky cliff into a clear pool, mist rising where the water met the rocks, but no one was in the mood to take selfies or splash in the water. They sat on the surrounding boulders, eating granola bars in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Emily noticed Mark hadn't joined them. He was standing at the edge of the clearing, staring into the woods again. She was about to call out to him when Lisa grabbed her arm. "Look at that," Lisa whispered, pointing to the base of the waterfall. Carved into the rock, partially hidden by moss, was a symbol, a circle with a strange, jagged pattern inside, like a star but warped, unnatural. It didn't look like graffiti or anything modern. The edges were weathered, as if it had been there for decades, maybe centuries. "What is that?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Lisa said, "but it gives me the creeps." Before they could investigate further, Sarah clapped her hands, rallying the group. "All right, team. Time to head back. We've got a big dinner planned tonight." Her voice was brittle, like she was trying to convince herself as much as the others. As they started the trek back to Blackthorn Lodge, Emily couldn't shake the image of that symbol. It felt wrong, like it didn't belong in the natural world. And the way Mark had been acting, the whispers she'd heard last night, that thing in the woods, it was all starting to add up to something she didn't want to face. Back at the cabin, the group tried to recapture some normalcy. Sarah had planned a big spaghetti dinner, and the smell of garlic bread filled the kitchen, but the atmosphere was strained. Mark had gone straight to his attic room, refusing to come down. Tom and another coworker, Jen, whispered about how he was losing it, but Emily wasn't so sure. She'd seen the fear in his eyes. Whatever was going on, he wasn't making it up. After dinner, Sarah suggested a group game, some corporate version of charades, but no one was into it. Instead, they sat around the living room, sipping cheap wine and avoiding eye contact. Emily kept glancing at the windows, the darkness outside pressing against the glass like a living thing. She swore she saw movement once or twice, but when she looked closer, there was nothing. Around 9 p.m., Lisa stood up, announcing she was going to bed. "I'm done with this creepy vibe," she said, half joking but clearly rattled. Emily followed her upstairs, not wanting to be alone. As they reached the second-floor hallway, they heard a sound from above, a low, rhythmic thumping coming from the attic. "Is that Mark?" Emily asked. Lisa frowned. "What's he doing up there, tap dancing?" They hesitated, then crept toward the attic stairs. The thumping grew louder, accompanied by a faint, guttural chanting. It wasn't English. It sounded older, guttural, like something from a language no one spoke anymore. Emily's stomach twisted. She grabbed Lisa's arm. "We should get Sarah." But Lisa, always the bold one, shook her head. No way. I'm not waiting for Miss Team Spirit to handle this. She marched up the stairs and pounded on the attic door. Mark, what the hell are you doing? The thumping stopped. So did the chanting. For a moment, there was total silence. Then the door creaked open, just a crack. Mark's face appeared, pale and sweaty, his eyes wild. You need to leave, he whispered. All of you. Now. Mark, you're freaking me out, Lisa said, but her voice wavered. What's going on? He opened the door wider and Emily gasped. The attic floor was covered in papers, pages torn from his notebook, covered in frantic sketches of that same symbol from the waterfall. Candles burned in a circle around his cot, their flames flickering unnaturally, like they were caught in a draft no one could feel. They're coming, Mark said, his voice barely audible. They've been waiting. The whispers. They're not random. They're calling us. Who's coming? Emily asked, her mouth dry. Mark didn't answer. Instead, he shoved past them, bolting down the stairs. Lisa and Emily exchanged a look, then chased after him. By the time they reached the living room, Mark was grabbing his coat and shouting, "We have to go, now!" The rest of the group stared, confused and alarmed. Sarah stood up, trying to take control. "Mark, calm down, you're scaring everyone." But before she could finish, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then went out completely. The room plunged into darkness, the only light coming from the dying fire in the fireplace. Outside, the whispers started again, louder this time, closer, circling the cabin like a pack of wolves. Panic erupted. Tom bolted to the door, fumbling with the lock, while Jen screamed for everyone to stay calm. Emily froze, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. The whispers were everywhere now, overlapping, a chorus of voices that seemed to come from inside her head as much as outside. She couldn't understand the words, but the intent was clear. "We see you. We know you." Mark was in the corner, clutching his notebook like a lifeline, muttering, "It's too late. It's too late." Lisa grabbed Emily's arm, dragging her toward the kitchen. "We're getting out of here," she hissed. But as they reached the back door, something slammed against it from the outside. The wood splintered, and a long, thin arm reached through the gap, gray, emaciated, with fingers that were too long, too sharp. Emily screamed, stumbling back. Lisa grabbed a knife from the counter, slashing at the arm, but it withdrew as quickly as it appeared, leaving only a sickly sweet smell, like rotting flowers. "What the hell was that?" Lisa shouted, her bravado crumbling. No one answered. The group was in chaos, some running for the windows, others hiding under furniture. Sarah was trying to call 911 on her phone, but there was no signal, just static and, faintly, those same whispers. Emily's mind raced. She remembered Mark's story about the woods, the symbol at the waterfall, the thing they'd seen on the trail. This wasn't random. Something in these woods, something old, something wrong, had been waiting for them. And now it was here. Mark suddenly stood, his fear replaced by a strange calm. "I can stop it," he said, his voice steady. "I know what they want." Before anyone could stop him, he walked to the front door and opened it. The whispers surged, a deafening roar, and then silence. Emily peered outside, her breath catching. Mark was gone. The porch was empty, the woods beyond swallowed by darkness. The group huddled in the living room, barricading the doors and windows with furniture. No one spoke. The whispers had stopped, but the silence was worse, like the calm before a storm. Emily kept replaying Mark's words. "They're calling us." What did that mean? And where had he gone? Around 3 a.m., Tom suggested they make a run for the van. "It's our only shot," he said. "We can't stay here." Sarah, her face streaked with tears, nodded. "Okay, but we stick together. No one gets left behind." They grabbed what they could: coats, flashlights, a fire poker for protection, and crept to the front door. The van was parked about 50 yards away, barely visible in the moonlight. Emily's legs felt like jelly, but she forced herself to move, staying close to Lisa. They made it halfway to the van when the whispers returned, louder than ever. Shapes moved in the trees, tall, thin figures with limbs that bent at wrong angles, their faces obscured by shadow. Emily's flashlight caught one for a split second, and she wished it hadn't. Its eyes were empty sockets, its mouth a gaping void that seemed to pull at her, like it was trying to swallow her soul. "Run!" Tom screamed. The group scattered, their plan dissolving into panic. Emily and Lisa sprinted for the van, but when they reached it, the tires were slashed, the windows smeared with that same symbol from the waterfall, drawn in something dark and sticky. Emily gagged, realizing it was blood. Behind them, screams echoed through the woods. One by one, the group was being picked off. Jen's voice cut off mid-cry. Tom's flashlight beam vanished into the trees. Sarah was sobbing somewhere in the distance, then went silent. Lisa yanked Emily toward the woods. "We have to hide," she whispered. They dove behind a cluster of boulders, crouching low, barely breathing. The whispers were everywhere, but the creatures, whatever they were, didn't seem to know exactly where they were. Not yet. Emily's mind was spiraling. She thought of Mark, his notebook, his warnings. He'd known something about this place, something he hadn't told them. Had he sacrificed himself to buy them time? Or had he been part of it all along? Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt meaningless. The whispers faded, and the woods grew still. Emily and Lisa waited until dawn, when the first rays of sunlight pierced the trees. They crept out, trembling, expecting to be grabbed at any moment. But the creatures were gone. So was the rest of the team. The van was still useless, so they walked, following the dirt road back to the highway. It took hours, but they finally flagged down a passing trucker who called the police. When the authorities arrived, Emily and Lisa told them everything, though they could see the skepticism in the officer's eyes. A search team was sent to Blackthorn Lodge, but they found nothing. No bodies, no blood, no trace of the other 6 employees. The cabin was pristine, like no one had been there at all. Even Mark's notebook was gone. Emily and Lisa were questioned for days, their story dissected by detectives, psychologists, and even a few reporters who got wind of the Hocking Hill's vanishing. The official report called it a group hallucination, possibly caused by contaminated food or mass hysteria. The missing employees were presumed lost in the woods, though no remains were ever found. Emily knew better. She saw those things, felt their presence. She still heard the whispers in her dreams, faint but persistent, like they were waiting for her to come back. Lisa moved away, cutting contact, unable to cope. Emily stayed in Dayton, but she quit Pinnacle Financial and avoided the outdoors. She tried to research the symbol, the whispers, anything that might explain what happened, but found nothing concrete. Just old legends about Hocking Hills, stories of settlers disappearing, of woods that ate people.